Hello everyone, and welcome to the lecture on Jupyter Notebooks. So in the previous lecture I explained about general IDEs, how you would run a normal .py file, but now we're going to explore the IDE or development environment we're going to be using a lot for this course, which is the Jupyter Notebook. Let's explore some more of its features, how it works, how we can start it up on our own computer, etc. Okay, so as I mentioned before, you can always do or use Jupyter online for free at try.jupyter.org, and then you can start a notebook. So if I go back here like we did in the previous video, it'll take you to something like this. You click New, Python 2, or Python 3 if you are already familiar with Python 3. Title your notebook, hello, and then you can start using your notebook. Now, what if you want to save these files onto your own computer? There's various ways to do that. You could click save here, etc. Or let's show you the more common way, which is to start this on your own computer. So how would you do that? If you're on Windows, what you're going to do is type in Anaconda command prompt. If you're familiar with PowerShell in Windows, that would work as well. But I'll assume you're not too familiar with PowerShell, so we'll use Anaconda command prompt. If you're on Mac, just follow these directions on your terminal. Same with Linux users. And what you're going to do is type in Jupyter Notebook. Now note, I'm not starting Python. I'm just straight up in my terminal or command prompt typing Jupyter space notebook. I hit enter. It'll take a little bit to run. Notice a new tab has opened. And right now I'm running Jupyter on a local host 888/tree. So I'm running this on my own computer. Something to note is that Anaconda will start the Jupyter Notebook wherever I was in my command prompt. So if I check my command prompt here, I was under C users, my username Anaconda, so all my files will be saved here. If you want to start your Jupyter Notebook somewhere else, you can use CD or change directory commands within your command prompt to change to whatever directory you prefer to save your notebook files in. Alright, so let's go ahead and see what this looks like. It's going to be pretty much exactly the same as it was online, except now we're running it on your own computer. So make sure you're using a browser such as Google Chrome or Mozilla Firefox. Some browsers such as Opera are not supported by Jupyter Notebooks yet. So I'll go here to New and click New Python 2 Notebook. So I've started up a notebook, and now let's go ahead and look at the various features. If I want to name my notebook, I click here, Untitled, and name my notebook. So I'll name this My First Notebook. Hit Enter or OK. And now what we're going to do is check out all the various buttons and features. Something I want to point out, that if you Google manual Jupyter Notebook and click the first link here, it'll take you to a more official Jupyter Notebook user's manual. And this goes over everything. It's actually super extensive, so I'm just scrolling down here. This goes over a lot on various cases of cells, markdown cells, shortcuts, etc. I'll just go over the important stuff here that we'll be using throughout this course. So first thing you're going to want to know is File. You can make new notebooks here. You can open old notebooks, make copies, renames, save and checkpoint your notebooks, print preview, and you can also download your notebooks as .py files, so you can run them in a more traditional format. You can download them as HTML, Markdown, or even PDF, so you can share them with other people. Or the normal format is this .ipynb file, iPython notebook file. As I mentioned before, Jupyter Notebooks used to just be called iPython notebooks, but now that they support both Julia and R and other languages, they're called Jupyter Notebooks. Okay, so let's see what else we can do. We can edit, we can cut cells, copy cells. So what is a cell? A cell is what I have here, so in cell. So what I want you to do is say print, single quotes, hello world, and I know we've done this a lot. And there's various ways I can actually run this cell. Cell is where there's going to be an in cell, and cell is where you can input code and then run it. So one way to run it is to click this run cell button here. It looks like a play button. And if I click that, I will run that cell. Another way to run cell, which is what you're going to be doing more often, is for instance print, and I'm going to write shift plus enter will run a cell. And that's exactly the case. So if I click shift enter on my computer, it will automatically run that cell. That's really important to know. That way you're not constantly going up and clicking this play or run cell button. If you notice a cell is taking a long time to run, you can click right here and that will interrupt the kernel. The kernel is what your cell is running. You can also, like I mentioned before, save and checkpoint. This button will insert a cell below. So if I click this button here, it inserts a cell below the current cell I'm at. So cells are where you input your code. The output will occur right below it. Let's say I wanted to insert a cell between these two. I could click plus and I'll insert a cell there. You can cut a selected cell, copy a selected cell, paste cell below. Those are very similar to all the edit commands here. There's view commands, which will toggle the header and toggle the toolbar. This is the toolbar, this is the header, so you can toggle those on and off. I'll leave them in place now. You really have no reason ever to toggle them off. You can insert cells above and below. So if I wanted to get my top cell and insert a cell above it, I can do insert cell above, and I have the cell here. The cell itself, if I'm clicked inside a cell and click the cell, I will be able to run the cell, run all above, run all below, etc. So something to keep in mind is that cells remember which ones have been run and which ones have not been run. And you'll notice the number here indicates the order. So this was the first cell I ran, into is the second cell I ran, etc. Okay, zooming in a little further, there's a kernel. Kernel is basically the code that's running, so you can interrupt, restart, or reconnect your kernels in case you run some code that's taking forever to run, or you notice you have some buggy code and something's wrong. Click kernel, click interrupt, restart, or reconnect, depending on your error. You shouldn't see that many errors right now that we're learning because we're going to be typing out pretty simple code. And then help. So there's help for a variety of the libraries and Python in general, so you can use that. And now what I'm going to do is go for some really common shortcuts and teach you those shortcuts in Python, which are the ones in the Python Jupyter notebooks, which are the ones you're going to be using the most. So what are the shortcuts I want you to know? Definitely the first one is print shift enter will run a cell. So I click shift enter, it will run a cell. Another shortcut that I really want you to know is stuff that has to do with help and tab autocompletes. So as we learn more about Python, we'll learn about stuff called methods and different data objects. That's going to be the next section. So you'll notice I'll be able to, and I know we haven't learned about lists yet at all, but I'm going to make one just to illustrate this topic. So here I have a list of 1, 2, 3. Don't worry, we have a whole lecture on this. But something you'll notice me do is suddenly I'll get a pop-up that looks like this to call methods. What I'm doing is I'm clicking the tab button or key on my keyboard. So the tab button. So what I'm going to say here is print tab will show a pop-up of the methods on an object. Now don't worry if that doesn't make sense right now. As you go throughout this course, you'll look back and think, oh, so that's what tab does, those are methods, etc. We'll learn more about this in the Python objects and data structure basics, but I want you to be aware of it for right now. One more thing I want you to be aware of is shift tab will basically make an expanded view of that. So I'm going to say l.sort, and I know we haven't done this yet, but if I click shift tab after this, I'll get a document string. And I know you don't know what that means yet, but just keep in mind that print shift plus tab will show help pop up for doc string. Okay, so shift enter, tab, and shift tab are probably the key shortcuts to know. Another thing I want to go over is just help in general in Python. Jupyter notebooks have a nice built-in help here, and they'll take you to links. But if you ever want help on anything in Python, you can just write HELP, help, parentheses, and then put in inside the parentheses whatever you want help about. So let's say I wanted help about that list. Then you have this total output here that says help on list object. It'll tell you about different methods on that list, various doc strings, what you can do with it, etc. So never be afraid to use the help within Python. It's super useful. So I'm going to delete all this and then click Shift Enter to run a blank cell. That cleared out the output. And finally, what I want to go over is the different types of cells. So right now these are all what are known as code cells, but I can also change these cells to be markdown cells. And what markdown cells are, it's just markdown text. So I can write normal text here. This will not run as code. Not. And then if I do Shift Enter here, you'll notice this is just markdown text, just normal text. It's not going to run as code. Now let's say you wanted to do this within a cell block. Now we're going to learn about our first real Python lesson, and that's how to do comments in your Python code. There's two ways to do comments. Hashtag. This is a comment. So that's how you can run comments in code. Python will ignore anything that has a hashtag in front of it. You'll also notice it's a different color from the rest of the code. So if I Shift Enter to run this cell, you'll notice nothing happens. One other way to write comments in Python is to do triple quotes. So I have triple single quotes here, and this is for larger comments. Larger multi-line comments. And you'll notice here in this larger multi-line comment, it's also colored differently. It looks like a string, and it is one, but it will be ignored as the doc string within a function. So I know that doesn't make too much sense right now, but I just want you to be aware of it. It's the way to write a larger doc string comment in your code. We'll learn about that much further on in the course. But for right now, if you ever want to comment your code, you can either, since you're using Jupyter Notebooks, change the cell to a markdown cell, write notes in markdown. That's the key takeaway here. Or use hashtags to comment your code. Okay. That's it for the main introduction to Jupyter Notebooks. I know we haven't done a lot with pure Python right now, but don't worry, once we get started with the Python object and data structures, we'll go headfirst into actually learning how to code. Let's just do a quick review of what we've done so far. If you ever want to start up a Jupyter Notebook, you could, option A, just go to try.jupyter.org and do everything in browser, online, or go to either your terminal or Anaconda command prompt, right here, type in Jupyter space notebook. You'll see some stuff pop up automatically. It'll open up a new tab in your browser. Remember, use Chrome or Firefox. And it'll open up your home page. You're going to click New Python 2 Notebook. So I'm going to do that right now. It's going to create a new notebook for me. After the notebook's been created, I can go to it. For instance, I have my first notebook here. This one actually didn't open because I closed Python earlier, so it's actually not running anymore. But you could do new notebook. You'll get something that looks like this. If you ever want to find out where your notebooks are, you can do pwd, which stands for print working directory. Run that cell, and it'll print out where you're actually working as a directory. Right now it's not doing anything because I mentioned before I stopped Python running already. You can do Shift Enter to run a cell. This tab will show a pop-up of methods on an object. Just clicking tab, and Shift tab will show a help pop-up for a docstring. Worry about those later on in the course, but right now, main takeaways are how to start a Jupyter Notebook either on your own computer or online, how to use Shift Enter to run a cell, markdown text, and how to do comments. Okay, in the next lecture, what we're going to go over is how to get access to all the Jupyter Notebooks that go along for every lecture. We'll learn about some additional resources to help you answer questions in Python, and that'll be it, and then we'll get started with actual coding. Okay, I'm excited. I hope you are too. I'll see you at the next lecture.